Hi guys, in just 1 second, I'm going to be introducing Mary Kubica, and we're going to be talking, and I hope that's how you say her last name. I'm about to find out. Her newest book, which was released last June, is called Every Last Lie, and it is very suspenseful. It is an amazing thriller. I love a good thriller that's not gory. It's just one that takes you on a ride every page, every sentence, because I was listening to it and reading it. In case her name doesn't sound familiar to you, she wrote The Good Girl in 2014, and then Pretty Baby, and then Don't You Cry. And so basically, it's a book a year for her, and they're all suspenseful. And she's known as an amazing suspense writer, and I can't wait to talk to her about how she does it because it is not an easy way to write. So, anyway, here is Mary.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited today to be speaking with author Mary Kubica, and her latest book is called Every Last Lie. It was released last June, and thank you so much, Mary. I'm so excited to be talking to you about this book.
Thank you so much for having me here, Michelle. I'm thrilled to be here.
I feel like I live this book because because I read it and then I listened to it. Okay. And I don't know if you've ever listened to your book. A lot of authors haven't listened to their own books, so they don't know what I've been through. But these two guys that you have, and I don't sure if you get to pick or not, but they are amazing readers. Okay. Because especially the woman, like playing Clara, I mean, like, she had me, like, so going. And I would have to, like, pause her and be like, okay, all right, I'll relax.
I'm thrilled to hear that. And I do actually, for Every Last Lie, I was able to choose the audiobook narrators for it. And so my publisher sent me just a couple snippets of different narrators. And it was a really neat experience because, of course, after writing Every Last Lie, I had this idea in my head of how Nick and Clara would sound. So to hear the narrator speaking and really try and pick one that I thought suited the character was a lot of fun to do. And I'm thrilled that you enjoyed listening to them because I know that really an audiobook narrator has such an impact on the way that a listener hears that book, and they can really sway a reader's opinion in one way or another about the book. So I'm thrilled that they did a great job. I know that they did, but it's always so nice to hear it.
Yeah, and sometimes I get criticisms for people will say, "Oh, she didn't read the book; she only listened to it." And I say to those people, like, I have to do other things, okay? but seriously, this is a huge part of your business. I mean, listen, lots of people listen to the audiobooks. I am not alone in this. I know so many people that have Audible credits. They buy a package of them, and they, because they're driving, they have to commute, or they're going on a trip. And so I say, you're absolutely right. A good narrator can make or break a book, and these guys were so amazing. Like, I've never heard of them. Sometimes I know them, but I stumbled on her name because her name is Carly, and then there's Clara, and then there's Carly. So I was like looking at the name. I'm like, wait, let me just say it right. But yeah, she was amazing, and I did go. Like I said, I switched back and forth on WhisperSync. I think it's the most beautiful thing for a reader ever because it'll go back and forth from wherever you are. It picks it up, and I love that. So anyway.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. And I get asked a lot, how do I like audiobooks or ebooks or physical books? And as a reader, my preference is always a physical book. But as a writer, I personally don't care how a reader, accesses my book. If they listen to it or if they read it in ebook format or if they prefer a physical book, just as long as my story is getting to them somehow. So I have no preference at all from that angle, and I'm thrilled just that somebody would pick up the book, in whatever format.
Yeah, and I do prefer hardback. And I'll actually, a lot of times, like, I try not to. I'll like go shopping for clothing and end up in Barnes and Noble. Okay, and then
do.
I know, and then I buy all the hardbacks of the books that I loved, and that's why I've started to do giveaways, because I'm like, this is ridiculous. Okay, this is a ridiculous habit, but I do love the physical book so much, and I'll go through it again, like, you know, just to see it on a physical page, and the covers are so beautiful, and you know, there's everything that I love about a hardback. So, you know. But you know, like I said, I'll go like tell my daughters I'm going shopping for clothes and come back with like 5 books. Look, at Barnes and Noble are everywhere. You can't help it. So. But that's me. But okay, I want to tell everybody what this is about, and there are no spoilers here. We don't do that because I want everybody to experience this book like I did. And I love thrillers that are not gory at all, because it's not about like the death scene is not about like how he dies, or you know, it doesn't, because that's just me. So I love this book because I love thrillers, but sometimes you pick up a thriller and you're like, oh God, I don't want to read that much detail. But this was just perfect for me. And you had me. I'm a quotes person, but I'm also the first line in the book. And now I know, because I went on YouTube and there's actually a little video for anybody who wants to watch it. You put out, did you put it out, or your publishing company put it out?
My publisher, yes.
Yeah. So they picked up the first line too, but I picked this very, you know, as soon as I read this first line, I'm like, this is going in one of my favorite first lines. And it says, they say that death comes in threes. So then right away you're like, oh, I'm scared already. It just is such a perfect setup for what happens. So I just had to tell you that I love that first line.
Oh, I'm so
glad. Did you write that? Was that the first line you wrote, or did you go back and write it?
I went back and wrote it, but I think that first line or that first paragraph of any book is just so important, because of course that is the first thing a reader sees when they open up the book, and you want to hook them from page one. So that's one of those things. Sometimes it just comes out, you know, as I'm writing a manuscript, it just comes out naturally when I sit down to start a new project. But sometimes it's one of those that I need to sort of get into my book a little bit, into the plot, get to know the characters before I can go back and really make that first line that's going to grab the reader from the get-go.
Well, the way this tension is set up is so perfect, because we have Nick's voice and Clara's voice, and Nick is her husband who dies, and that's not a spoiler because we all know that, but it's just like to hear him. So, you know, we know he died, and then we hear him like leading up to, and like every time he talked or every chapter I read of him, I was like, oh my God, and then he did this, and then he did this. But I loved her because I have 6 children, and so, you know, Clara gives birth. And, you know, you kind of go through, you know, the way you wrote her, like her pregnancy, and then the giving, like it was dead on how it feels, like how you feel leading up to your birth, and the tension and then the after she gives birth. It was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I'm a mother, so I could draw on some of my own experiences for that. And, you know, Clara, when the novel opens, and she does, of course, learn right away that her husband has died, she has this 4-day-old son at home. And so she's not sleeping. She's physically exhausted and still healing from the pregnancy and giving birth. And now she's facing this grief, and in addition to many other things that are going on in the novel. And so she has got more on her plate than she could possibly handle. And I had great difficulty exploring Clara just because she was in such a hard place in her life. But I really enjoyed kind of diving deep into her psyche and you know, what is going on physically and mentally and emotionally in her life.
Yes. And that's what I thought you did so well, because, you know, I can remember, you know, like I said, you know, by my 5th child, when I had older children, and I swear there was a 2-month period of time that I do not remember. Like, not at all.
I can imagine. I can completely imagine. I feel like once you have those kids, I have 2 myself, and I just feel like to keep you going all the time. And they definitely keep you on your toes, and especially in those early days when you're just not sleeping well and you're functioning just, based on necessity. Somebody needs to eat, somebody needs to do this, and that's about the only thing that's driving you.
Yeah, well, and especially with the second one on. Okay, your first one, you're given a little bit of grace because you can actually sleep when they're sleeping. You can actually figure it out. But, what I loved about what you did with her is, Macy is like, is she 4?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, she's 4. So anyone who's ever had a 4-year-old knows, like, talk nonstop, okay? Like, and then she's coming at her. You just know that she's just like, oh my gosh, I can't even answer this girl's questions. I can't.
Right.
She just won't stop talking, and she's nursing, and she's, it was so perfect because I've been there. I know what that feeling is like. It's like, oh my gosh, are you still talking? You're still talking. And if she placates her, she just gives her answers to questions.
Right. Yes, just to kind of quiet her and, satisfy her for a time. Of course, those questions just resurface again later on. But, she's poor Clara. I felt very empathetic for Clara throughout. And, she makes some questionable decisions throughout the book. And I often think, thank goodness, very few of us have ever been in Clara's shoes before. So I think it's it's hard to say what we would do in a similar situation, if we would make some of the same choices that Clara does, or if we would go a different direction. I don't know.
Well, I love the title, and for some reason in my brain when I was either listening or reading it, I kept thinking it was like Every Little Lie. And then I go back and go, no, it's Last Lie. That is so perfect. Every Last Lie. Like, that just sets it up so well. And I don't know if it's because I've said little before, like in different ways, and then I was like, no, it's Last Lie, Every Last Lie. And like it's just, I don't know. Did you come up with the title yourself?
Yeah, well, it was a group effort with myself and my editor, marketing and sales. So, and that's the way titles seem to be oftentimes. And it was one of those that didn't come early on. It came at the end of the process. The book was completely done, and my editor and I were done with all the revisions. And then we sat down and thought, we need a title for this book. And, just kind of went through, obviously, the themes. And, it's important to come up with something that's unique, that there aren't 8 other books out there. I'm on Barnes & Noble right now with the same title. And just something that would really be gripping, that it obviously is thrilling and has that suspense element to it, and just really speaks for what's inside the book. And I love going to book clubs. I can't say too much right now because I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I do love doing book clubs and really kind of talking about that title and what it means, because I think that there's more there than is on the surface.
Yeah, and that's why it's like when I decided to do this, I was like, you have to make that decision. Are we going to go there or not? And I'm like, no, I'm going to be one of those. I'm going to be the person that doesn't go there, because you have plenty of other people to talk to in book clubs that have, you can answer their questions.
Right.
I'm the one that's setting it up for everybody to go get the book so that they can read it, and I'm really happy about that. But it does make it a little bit difficult when it's a thriller, because we have to kind of skirt around things. But okay, so I have a question for you, and I was going to look it up, but then I thought, no, I'm going to talk to her. I just want to hear your answer. On all your covers, because you have 4 books out now, you've basically done a book a year that come out around the same time. On the covers, one of the letters is always like askewed.
Yes.
So is that like a secret, or is there?
Yeah. So it's almost always an R that is backwards, but my second novel, Pretty Baby, has an upside down A.
Okay.
And I have to say, I can take no credit for this. The art department at my publisher, they came up with this all on their own. And of course, it started with my first novel, The Good Girl. And the minute I saw that cover concept, I thought that is really cool, because it begs the question right there on the cover. Everybody wants to know why that R is backwards. And, I usually say, because of course I do get this question quite often, and I usually say that it really sort of hints at the, the twisty nature of the book, that the characters and the plot line are not always what meets the eye. Those things are going to twist on you. And it's become a bit of a trademark now, but I think that is so cool, that a reader could go to the bookstore and just see that backwards R, that upside down A, and hopefully know that it's one of my books. So I love, it's just this tiny, tiny detail that some very smart person thought to put on there, but it has so much impact.
Yeah, and I remember with The Good Girl, I remember seeing that cover back then, and I remember thinking the same thing. I was like, oh, that is so cool, because then just from that cover, you're like, that is not, because the title itself, The Good Girl, you're like, yeah, I don't think so, and then it kind of draws you in. So, covers matter. I tell people that all the time. Covers matter as a reader. That's what the first thing you see. You want to question that. That's why I was like, I'll look it up, and then I'm like, I'd rather ask her,
Right.
And I mean, The Good Girl was your first novel. I mean, published novel, right?
Yes, and it was the first novel I ever finished. I had many starts before The Good Girl, but that was the first one that actually reached the end then.
And then that did so well. Like, were you just blown away by how much people love The Good Girl? Like, as your
Totally blown away. When I sold the book, and I wrote The Good Girl completely in secrecy. It took me 5 years to write it. I had been kind of one of those closet writers. I didn't really want anybody to know that I was writing, because I had no idea if my work was good, and I was a little too shy and embarrassed to find out. So I preferred to do it totally in secrecy. But when I finished the end of The Good Girl, I just felt like I owed it to myself to see if there was something there. And so I submitted it to to literary agents. Took a couple of years to find an agent. So I didn't know what to expect when this book finally made its way out into the world. And I thought, if nothing else, like my mom and my grandmother will go buy some copies. I had no idea how it would do. And so little by little, as that publication date got closer and I realized this book stands a chance, it might do okay, I was just completely blown away.
Well, as a thriller writer, a suspense writer now, like when I was reading that, I'm thinking how hard this is to write, because the tension that you have to keep going. I mean, I could not finish it fast enough. Okay. But then I have a tendency where I'm like, I just want to skip ahead. I just want to see what happened. And I'm like, no, don't do it. And then I'm listening, and I'm reading, and I'm like, okay, 100 more pages. I can do it. I can not look. I can do this. But I think about what you have to do to get me to feel that way, because that's what the readers are looking for, is when they pick up a book that says, suspense or thriller, we're looking for that ride, and
right.
I'm thinking, what is that, when you're writing that, and you've got it, every chapter, every page matters so much to keep that story going. Like, do you ever do you put out like a great outline, or do you just come up with it as you go?
Yeah, so I do not outline. I come up with it as I go. I start with some idea. I usually don't know what the ending of the book will be, but I just have that starting point, and I dive in and create the scenario and get to know my characters a little bit, and then figure out where the story is going to take me. I have a tendency to overwrite and then, sit back down and just look at this draft of mine and start pulling out ideas or those extra words that I don't need to just kind of keep the pace of the story going. Because my characters, I feel like, are very important. I want my readers to not necessarily like or love my characters, but I want them to connect with them on some level. And I find that that's sometimes a tricky balance, to create these characters and, show some emotion and hopefully, draw readers in on that level, but also keep them on the edge of their seat and gripped by the pace of the plot line. So there's definitely some balance there in trying to work that out. I want to keep you going and keep you entertained and wanting answers quickly, but on the other hand, really let you settle into the characters and their lives and stories.
Yeah, and, of course, so as a woman with Clara, we feel nothing but empathy for her, the whole way. We're just like, just feel so bad for her. And then Nick, I found it's like, I love him. I hate him. Okay, I love him. Okay, now I hate him.
Yes. And that is how most readers that I've spoken to feel about Nick. It's definitely a love-hate relationship. And, he's an interesting character, and he was fun to write. Just, I felt like I had a lot more in common with Clara than I did Nick. And so I think that that's always interesting for me, to just put myself in someone else's shoes completely and trying, become one sort of with this character I really know nothing about.
Right. And I love how you did that, because, to make him totally lovable, well, that's just not, there's no story in that. So I love how, the way you went back and forth, you did that so beautifully because, the minute I love him, next chapter, I'm like, and that's just so much fun for me because, as the reader, like I said, to have him totally lovable, that's just not, that's not going to work.
Right.
So,
right.
take the roller coaster ride with him was a lot of fun. And so I'm really happy to see how well this has been doing. Like, it's been out for 6 months. You're still getting like rave reviews on Amazon and Goodreads, and I'm sure you're thrilled with the fact that you can keep doing these suspense books, and they keep doing so well.
Absolutely. And, with every book, the experience never gets old. Every book is a new beginning, I feel like. And so I'm always, on the edge of my seat when it gets closer to launch day, and I'm looking at those reviews and the ratings. And so I'm always so happy when it seems like readers are really enjoying the books. And I've been thrilled with the way that Every Last Lie has done.
Well, okay, so the last question I always have is, what's next? Do you have a next?
I do. So I have my next book is all done. I'm waiting to see a cover concept, so hopefully any day now I'll see one of those.
Yay.
It's called When the Lights Go Out, and it'll be out this year in September 4th.
Ooh, okay.
And so I'm thrilled to share it with you. It takes place in Chicago, as all of my books do. And this one begins when a young girl, she's 20 years old, her mother has just died of breast cancer, and it's just been she and her mother. So now she's on her own. She sort of ventures off into the world. She's put her life on hold for the last 5 years to take care of her mother, and now she's sort of free to do as she wants. And she applies for college and gets an apartment of her own. But in doing so, she comes across some red flags that make her question if she's really the person that she thinks she is, and how well if her past has kind of been a lie. And as she dives deeper into the story, she's not sleeping well in the wake of her mother's death. And as the days go on and she can't sleep at all, she starts to become more and more delirious and has some hallucinations and see things that she isn't sure if they're real or not real. And it's sort of a mystery of self-discovery that's really hampered down by her fatigue. And so I'm excited. It was definitely different than anything I've written before, and like I said, I'm thrilled to share it with you.
Oh, awesome. I can't wait. Okay. Personally, I can't wait. I will be buying it as soon as I can. So I just want to tell everybody I will have all of Mary's links underneath here. And the book that you can purchase right now is Every Last Lie. And thank you so much, Mary. It was so much fun to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Okay, hopefully we'll be talking to you soon. I can't wait to read it. So
thank you.
Okay, have a great day. Thanks.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Interview was so much fun. I love talking to Mary. I've been wanting to interview her for a long time, and I'm so happy we got to do it. It's called Every Last Lie, and that's her 4th book. I remember seeing the cover of The Good Girl in Barnes & Noble and just being so intrigued by her, and I'm so happy that I've finally gotten to read one of her books. And anyway, so if you liked listening to Mary and I chat, please hit like, and if you want to get the updates of these videos every day, please hit subscribe, and thank you for listening.